Hello, 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 hello. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me and you're still talking and I'm listening. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? I know you're not that full. How is everyone doing? Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I will be acting as your mistress of ceremony this evening. My name is Erica Wilson. I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Communications and Marketing for USI. And I will, as I stated, be your MC for the evening. How was food? Good? Can we give a round of applause for the food? Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so we're not going to hold you all long. We know it's from 6 to 8, but there's a lot of things that we need to get done in this time. So we're going to do this thing in decency and in order, all righty? So the first to come before you will be Miss Terry Francis from the Neighborhood Revitalization Coordinator. She's from the Planning City of Newport News. So Terry, let's show her some love as she comes on up.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah. I'm short, so I got a little voice. Y'all can hear me, right? All right. Well, I have the pleasure this evening of just giving a brief welcome to everyone. Again, my name is Terry Francis. I'm the Neighborhood Revitalization Coordinator for the City of Newport News, the Planning Department. I challenge anyone to say that faster than me. And I just want to welcome you all tonight. I'm so excited. We have a great community and a resident showing. It's going to be a very informative evening. We're going to talk about the Choice Neighborhood Initiative and new updates. And we're also going to talk about the Southeast Community Resource Area and what updates we have to offer you all as well. So again, thank you all so much for being a part of the great things and a part of the magic. We look forward to you participating in the Q&A tonight and also giving us your input on how we can continue to make this a wonderful and a great city. Thank you all so much. Erica?
Alrighty, next we will have a CNI or Choice Neighborhood Initiatives update by Mr. Owen Miller.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, great. So I've got a brief update for you guys, and then we'll actually kick it off with our three plan updates, and I'll pass the mic as soon as we're done with that. So before I get started, I've got a little bit of housekeeping I was asked to do. So first off, we've got a resource table over here in the back of the room. As you guys go, please help yourself, grab some literature. We have one flyer on Juneteenth, which will be going on in June. We've got lots of opportunities to sign up and participate. Please grab a flyer. We encourage everybody to join us in celebrating that week of events. In addition to that, we've got some flyers related to the CNI as well as the sector site, the presentations you'll hear momentarily. So please feel free to take some and pass them on to your neighbors who weren't able to make it out tonight. So before we get into the three plans, I do want to introduce a couple guests we have going on. In addition to the CNI meetings that we've had, we've also had some outside consultants with us this past week. I know some of you have probably participated as well. We've had our team from WPA Architects in working with development and providing input on 2510 Jefferson, one of our CCIs, which you'll hear about later this evening. Appreciate everything that they're doing. We've also got North Star, who are helping us out with the city's overall branding effort, as well as doing some work here in the Southeast community. So appreciate everybody that's come on out and provided some feedback already. If you would like to provide feedback, and we're certainly hoping you will, please jump on the city's Facebook page, and there'll be additional information that you can provide some of your own insights into that process as well. Before we get into the three plans tonight, and I think you'll be pleased with some of the updates and progress, I've got just a very brief couple minutes, just kind of for some folks that maybe aren't as familiar with the CNI, just a primer on what it actually is and what it entails. So let's see if I can get this to work. Great. So the first thing, a pretty basic one, is we just wanted to make sure folks were familiar with the actual boundaries or the CNI neighborhood. The neighborhood was a little bit of an artificial construct we had to create for the grant, which you'll hear about in a moment. But it's a portion of the southeast community. We are just outside it right here in Downing Groves. But as you can see from the map, it's largely bounded by the interstate. Terminal Avenue here to the east, the interstate to the north, 39th Street, the waterfront to the south, and then Marshall is the dividing line to the east. So we just wanted to make folks aware of the boundaries. To touch on the community a little bit, as anybody that lives here or is familiar with it, the CNI is an amazing community. It's got lots of resources and asset. It is a neighborhood that is rich in history and culture, and then probably the biggest asset of all is the people that live here. Having said that, the neighborhood has had some challenges, particularly in the second half of the 20th century. And that is part of the reason that we thought, City and the Housing Authority thought that it might be a good fit for the Choice Neighborhood Initiative. And a couple of examples of that, some of the challenges that the neighborhood faced. Now, these stats are a little dated. We've certainly made some progress, which is exciting to hear. But when we submitted the initial planning grant, there was 61% of the units, household units in the neighborhood were either public or assisted housing. The poverty rate was 54%, which was 3 times the amount in the city at large. And then unemployment level was 14%, which was 2 times the city's average rate. So there was obviously some areas that could be improved. And so that was kind of what started us down the path, one of the reasons why the neighborhood was eligible for the initially the Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant, and then eventually the Implementation Grant. So I will take us back to kind of the beginnings. I mentioned we started off with the planning grant. It's not a requirement to receive a CNI implementation grant from HUD, but it is recommended. We applied and were fortunate enough to be awarded a grant in 2016, $500,000 that went to the planning grant as well as some early action steps, some physical transformations, kind of the beginning of some of the next steps you'll see through the implementation grant. And my good friend Sheila can correct me if I'm getting the stats wrong, but it was really an opportunity to engage the public in a setting not too dissimilar to this here tonight. We had 68 community meetings, most of which, this was pre-COVID, most of which were in person. We received feedback from over 1,000 residents through various forms, and we had over 350 surveys with our Ridley residents. So it was an opportunity to really gain lots of community feedback, which then, through a 24-month process, was distilled into what eventually became our transformation plan, this copy right here. And that kind of provided us the blueprint for moving forward in what we've done since, and also when we actually applied for the implementation grant. So during the planning grant process, we went ahead and took a leap of faith and went ahead and applied for an implementation grant. I think that was in 2017. We had not yet completed the we had not yet completed the planning process, but we thought it was important enough and we were committed enough to moving forward with the process that we wanted to go ahead and do that. So we were shortlisted and fell just short. We did not receive it that year, and it was, I think I can speak for everybody, staff at all levels, as well as the citizens that provided all the feedback. It was tough to take. But we had only about 3 months to turn it around and reapply, which we did the following year, 2018, for the 2018 grant. And then in 2019, May of 2019, we were fortunate enough to hear that we had received the grant and the implementation. So it was, as you'll see here, and I'll touch on in a moment, This was certainly great news. I think it really validated a lot of the good work that had already gone on, showed that HUD believed in what we were doing, the community right there with us. Through the planning grant process, there was a genesis of a number of community organizations that have now become kind of partners in the implementation grant. We had the Service Provider Network and our Citizens Advisory Committee, who continue to work with us closely. So it really validated all the good work that had gone on thus far, but we knew there was a lot more to go. With the implementation grant award, I'll get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of the CNI, Choice Neighborhood Initiative, as well as the implementation grant. So for those that are unfamiliar with it, the Choice Neighborhood Initiative really began in 2000, I believe 11 or 12. It follows the Hope 6 grant from HUD, which previously focused on redeveloping public housing. And while I think it did a great job doing that, I think there was an understanding that that was not sufficient to really achieve transformation in a neighborhood. And so what HUD determined was to really get that transformation, you needed not only to invest in the housing, which we continue to do, but also the people element, probably the most important element, and then the neighborhood at large as well. And so what Choice, in essence, in one sentence, and this is mine, tries to do is it provides competitive grants. This is a very competitive process. Every year HUD awards between 3 and 5 awards for the implementation grant. It is a competitive process that transforms neighborhoods with distressed public or assisted housing and turns them into neighborhoods of opportunity through these 3 pillars, through these 3 plans, which is what we'll talk about here momentarily, and you'll hear an update on those. We always hear about, or for those that are familiar at all with the grant, always hear about the $30 million, which is by no means a small amount, right? But it also is only a small component of what it really takes to transform a neighborhood and a community. And I've given you a little bit of a breakdown just so folks understand. So the grant period is for 6 years. So we have 3 left, I believe. September 25, I think, is when we have to expend the funds. The breakdown, the requirement from HUD is that about a minimum of 18 million of that 30 goes to the housing component. But just to give you an idea, even our first phase of housing is north of that, and there will eventually be 3 phases. The neighborhood plan, which is a minimum of 4.5 of those 30 million, a maximum. And then with the people plan, similarly, a maximum of 4.5 million from that $30 million HUD grant. I will tell you, to provide the services that we're doing through the people plan, as well as then through all the neighborhood improvements, we'll exceed those numbers pretty easily with contributions from, as you see here, the public investment, city housing authority, state funds. Right now, at the turn of the year, it was about $170 million. So you can see that $30 million has also leveraged a lot of additional funds. And then private investment from all of the service providers, community groups, nonprofits that do great work in the community already. It's leveraging everything that they do to really provide those wraparound services for our Ridley residents. And as of last count, it was about $120 million of in-kind, primarily in-kind services that are going to our Ridley residents as well. So as you can see, it is a pretty big undertaking. It takes a lot of commitment, both time, talent, and treasure to make this occur, this transformation occur. We think it's well worth it. It's an investment that needs to be made in the community. And the city, the housing authority, our resident partners are excited to be a part of it. So with that, I will now turn it over to the first update we have tonight. Karen Wiles, our Executive Director for the Newport News Redevelopment and Housing Authority. It is.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's a beautiful evening, and I know there's lots of things you could be doing, but you have chosen to be here with us, and we really appreciate that, particularly since we've all been inside and not seeing everybody face to face as much as we used to when we started this whole process. So this is a very exciting time for us because we've made a lot of progress, and what I'd like to do tonight is give you sort of a progress and a status report as to our housing. So the first thing I want to tell you about, Owen indicated that, this planning process started back in 2016. And so with the input of citizens and everybody who came together at that time in that planning process, we all agreed on these 5 overarching goals for the housing for our choice neighborhoods. So the goals were to provide a diverse housing type for a very diverse community, and to integrate the types of housing in an indistinguishable way so that the affordable housing, the assisted housing, and the market rate housing could not be, you couldn't drive by and say, oh, that's a project, because that's certainly what you can do today. I know I can go to another city somewhere in another state, and I'll say, that's public housing. And my husband said, how do you know? It's like, believe me, I know. And so, and we do know. So that's what we want to get away from as one of our goals, is that the housing types, you can't tell one from the other. That we want to provide affordable housing in an equitable way. We want to increase the home ownership rate. Increasing the home ownership rate has been a goal of the authority in the city for some time, because the home ownership rate in the Southeast community is lower than that of the rest of the city. And so that's certainly a very important goal. And that we want to foster community. We all know the Southeast community and the CNI neighborhood is a very unique place to be. And we want to foster that and have any new residents who come to live here because they're attracted because of all the wonderful things that are happening, that they can take part in that feeling of community and know about the history of the community. So this is an exciting thing for me, because we are finally seeing these buildings come out of the ground. And just this week, the bricks started going up on these buildings, so they don't look like the green. And so we are so excited about the fact that this has happened, because these buildings have been on paper, they've been in our minds. This whole plan has been a plan, and now we're seeing it really happen. And I think a lot of us in the room are incredibly excited about this. So the good news is, so here's another view. This is still, a lot of progress is being made. I think these were taken just a few weeks ago, and so you go out there today, and there's more happening. But the good news is that the construction's on schedule. We've had some bumps in the road. COVID has not made life easier for us. It's made it a little bit harder for us, but I am pleased to say that we are on schedule right now. This is the building, this is the rendering of the building between 28th and 29th Street. This same poster is up there on the fence. If you're walking by, you can see it there. And in this multifamily building, there'll be 37 units, and then around the corner on 29th Street, there'll be 6 townhouses. And then the building next to this, there are 38 units. So between these 2 buildings, there'll be a total of 81 units there on the site in our Phase 1, which is what we call off-site, because it's not on the Ridley property proper. And so we'll talk about what's going on site at the Ridley property. Between these 2 buildings, there's going to be about 3,000 square feet of commercial space, and we're also very excited about that because, it's certainly going to complement what's going on across the street at Brooks Crossing, at the Opportunity and Innovation Center, at the shopping center, and so this is a very exciting development. And you also notice that, I think this pointer might work, there's going to be a rooftop terrace here at that corner of the building. So it would be a place for folks who live there. They can congregate, they can socialize, and it's an exciting, and plus there should be a great view from there as well. So I think that's very exciting. This is a rear view of the same building. Just to give you an idea, the parking will be to the rear, and this is going to be a very play area in the back, and then the community room is in this area right here. And so management offices are on the front, on the first floor, along with some commercial uses. So in terms of this project schedule, I said we are on schedule. Both buildings are going to be completed in October of this year after about a 15-month construction period, and that's been in the face of challenges that we've had. I know you probably all heard on the news about supply chain issues, about finding workers. You know, COVID kept a lot of people at home. So we are very thrilled that in October, we'll be having a ribbon cutting come October. And right now, our staffs of the Housing Authority and the Department of Economic Development are responding to expressions of interest from any local businesses and entrepreneurs that are interested in primarily space for retail or personal services there in the bottom floors of those two buildings. So moving on to the Ridley site, there it works. I know a lot of you probably have been watching the progress of the demolition as well. We were able to find alternate places for our Ridley residents to move to, finished up that process last June, started preparing the site for demolition, did some remediation that was required, and the demolition actually started in earnest in February. And also is scheduled to be completed by the end of next month. And we've made great progress there as well. I think we've got another picture of demo. Yeah, there we go. It's another shot of demolition. We did have, back in late February, an event to commemorate the progress that was being made to honor Ridley, and also with the theme, the community theme of beginning this new chapter of choice neighborhoods. Okay, so this is the building that this is a rendering of the building that will be constructed on the northeast corner of 16th Street and Jefferson Avenue. It's a 3-story building, again, with commercial uses on the first floor, along with the management offices on the first floor. This building will have 41 units in it. And then also on the site north of 16th Street, that we will have another 30 townhouse units on that site. So there'll be a total of 71 apartments there above 16th Street. Also, part of this effort is some home ownership opportunities along Ivy Avenue to complement the home ownership and the single family uses across the street on Ivy Avenue. And so those single family uses will go from 18th Street down to 12th. And in this bottom floor, there's going to be about 2,200 feet of commercial space, and up to 4 potential users, depending on who it's marketed to and how much space they would actually need. And again, here's the rear of that building. So as you can tell, it's very attractive from the front and the rear, and the parking again would be to the rear. This is a rendering of the townhouse units that will be on the site. As I said, there are going to be 30 of these north of 16th Street, and then south of 16th Street, there'll be 84 of these townhouse units. So the timeline for the work there on the Ridley site is that we'll be having the groundbreaking later this summer. The construction completion will be in August of 2023, which would be about a 13, 14-month construction time period to get that work done. We're real excited about some of the features that will be on site to include, not only those townhouse units, but south of 16th Street, there's going to be an early childhood development center that I think many of you have heard about, with the partnership with the Peak Center in Hampton, very much state-of-the-art child care facility. And then coupled with that, it's a partnership with Virginia Peninsula Community College for training of the folks who would work there at the center, and then as to be a resource and to have a presence of the community college in the Southeast community, because as many of you know, it's not all that easy to get to their campus, and so having their presence here in the Southeast community is going to be very important. So on this site, between 12th and 18th Street, there'll be 155 rental units. This is for the entire on-site development. 24 for sale housing units along Ivy Avenue. So there'll be a total of 179 dwelling units in this area, where prior to, with the apartments at Ridley, there was over 250 apartments there at the Ridley site. So it's going to be much less dense and incredibly more beautiful. So this is just a depiction of the single-family homes between 18th Street along Ivy Avenue and 16th Street. So there are going to be 7 single-family homes along that stretch, and then south of 16th Street there'll be 17 additional single-family homes. And so the time frame for that will be that, the demolition's the same. We're tearing down everything on that site at the same time. But starting next year, about this time, we're going to start selecting builders. We're hoping that we can attract builders from the community to participate in this incredible effort. And we will be selecting builders and doing that in a phased way, starting up at 18th Street. The goal is to get we'd have to get all of the site work done prior to, and probably have most of the multifamily development completed, so we don't have contractors walking all over each other at that site. We want to get the multifamily stuff done first and then get this done second. And we'll be awarding probably block by block in sections, so that we won't be putting out all 24 at once, probably that first 7 that's to the north, and then as we go along, award to builders to do construction. So that's the C&I proper presentation. And I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about Marshall Courts, because the section of Marshall Courts I'm going to talk about also happens to be in the C&I footprint. Not all of that property is in the C&I footprint. But for some time, we have been undertaking comprehensive renovations at Marshall Courts, and this is, as many of you are aware, this is the before of Marshall Courts. I think back in the early 1980s, the Housing Authority put those not terribly attractive mansard roofs on those buildings, and they have not aged well, and so we started undertaking renovation in phases, and because it's gotten terribly expensive, we were able to do smaller phases and smaller phases as we went along. So this is the renovated units at Marshall, but the cost to do the renovations has become very prohibitive. Marshall Courts is our largest public housing property. It's 348 units of housing, much too dense. It's how housing was developed in the 1940s and 50s, but how public housing was developed in the 1940s and 50s, but is not the way to do it. So we are working on an application to take down the remaining 88 units that we have not renovated. And we would be applying for tenant protection vouchers for those families that would be potentially affected. We sent all those 88 families letters back in December to let them know that this was going to be happening. And we've had meetings with the resident advisory group that's overarching for the Housing Authority, and the tenant council group at Marshall earlier this year. And we just recently sent another letter out just to remind people that this is happening. But people will have at least 1 year's notice from when we let them know back in December that this is going to be starting. So the plan, this is the units that are going to be demolished are those in blue, in this blue area. And so this is Madison Avenue here. This is 34th Street. And so it'll be this portion of the site. What we're looking at potentially doing, and this would be a little bit down the road, is building some single-family homes along Madison Avenue. We think we could probably get about 6 along there. And as those of you who are familiar, there's single-family homes along Madison Avenue in that area, and some very attractive. But then we really need the rest of the site for stormwater management, because the entire site is pretty dense, and we would intend to keep this green space and work at improving that property for green space. And it would also give a nice buffer between the housing that's been renovated. This would be green space in here, and then some single-family homes in here. But we're still in the planning stages for that, but I think it's important that the community knows what's going on too. The residents have been informed, as I said, about 4 or 5 months ago, but we thought it's important for the community to know. City Council's been advised, and the mayor's written a letter of support for our application that we'll be submitting late this year. So that is my presentation, and I'd be happy to do we want to do questions in between? How are we going to do that?
We were going to do it after
Okay, all right, perfect. All right. So I think the person who is coming up behind me is
me.
you. Wonderful. You're going to talk about people plan, and I don't take any papers that don't belong to me. So
No
thank
problem.
you.
I was just hoping my phone didn't ring while you were up here talking. Alrighty, so we're going to go right into the people portion of this plan. So when this plan was originally put together, there were some overarching goals that the planning committee wanted to see, the community wanted to see as outcomes for the families of Ridley. And so those goals can be seen here. It might be a little bit small to read, but just a lot of various things talking about the quality of life, quality health services, reducing food insecurity, boosting employment opportunities, enriching learning and support opportunities. As the new people lead, what we want to do is we want to hear from the community if these goals are still the goals of the community. Understanding that a lot of this is very on par with the work that we do around the country, but we want to make sure that these goals still feel right for the community. COVID did a lot of things, and so we want to make sure that we are still on pace for the goals that you all want to see for this beautiful city. But who is USI? Okay? We are a national nonprofit, 40 plus years, all over the country, and we have been welcomed mightily into the city, and we are so very thankful. I am going to speak on behalf of the team for this particular portion, but I do want to acknowledge everyone that is in the room from USI. So Alicia Walter, can you raise your hand? She's the regional vice president that will, okay, how are you? She will be the regional vice president for this community. We have Tyronda Mentor. She is our Vice President of Educational Initiatives, so she is going to make sure that all of the scholars, from the babies to the bigger babies, are all ready to do whatever they need to do from the cradle to career and beyond. Julian Wyatt. He is our CDFI Loan Fund Manager. He's the money man, okay? Okay. Eric Acosta. He is our project manager. He does all. He knows all. And then we have Zoe Rutherford. She is our project manager for data. And then myself, I am the director of communications and marketing. We're from all over the place. San Antonio, Atlanta, California, not the whole state. I forget where you're from in California, but we're not going to go there. Norfolk and Pittsburgh, and I'm from St. Louis. But what does that mean to you all? Absolutely nothing. And so what we do as a part of how we work is we always hire locally. And so we are so happy that with this particular project, there are 9 positions available. 3 of them have been filled. And our senior project manager is in the room. If you could stand up and raise your hand so everyone can see the newest project manager for this work. So some people may know him, so Mr. Ray will be leading the work for the Marshall-Ridley Choice Neighborhoods Initiative for USI. So who are we? Again, we are a national leader in the field of results-informed human services. And what does that mean? It means that the data tells us what we need to do. We don't just go off of feeling, but we go off of what the data tells us what needs to happen. And the data can come from a lot of different things. It can come from conversations with residents. It can come from data provided by the school system. It can come from data provided by stakeholders and folks that attend meetings like yourselves. And so we look at that data, and then we build strategies off of that data to make sure that the families of Ridley not only are stable, but have the opportunity to thrive however they see fit. And a very huge portion of this, outside of choice neighborhoods, is the family's choice. So our goal, if families want to come back, we are supporting them to move back. If they want to stay where they are, we want to make sure that they are stable and thriving where they are. It is all about family choice for us, and we're going to do all that we need to do to make sure that their choice are heard and at the center of everything that we do. So our mission is that all children and families will be stable and thriving. The will be is very important because it is a motion word. We have not got there yet. But when we do, everyone, from children to our seniors, will be stable and thriving and living the lives that they choose to live in the community that they want to live in. We are results driven, again, talking about the data. So the Annie E. Casey Foundation has the results plan process that we use. And so we have a 5-pillar system. Let's see if this light will work. So we have our family support. So we call it family support. Other institutions call it case management, but we don't believe families are cases. They're just people with unmet needs. And so with our family support, we're figuring out what those needs are so that we can meet them with the services that are already here in the community. We have workforce, we have education, we have economic mobility. And so economic mobility, that could be a lot of things. That could be getting to work, getting better paying jobs or living wage jobs. That could also be entrepreneurship. So whatever economic mobility looks like for that particular family, we want to connect them with all of the resources. And then policy and engagement, because it's very important that families know how to advocate for themselves long after this project is over. They should know how to advocate for their children in the school systems and the healthcare systems and all of the systems that they come across with. And so we want to make sure that families have all of the necessary things that they need so that they don't necessarily need support, but if they need support, they know how to get it, they know how to access it. And then housing stability. Because if you're not stably housed, all of these things, it's just really hard to really meet that if you don't know where you're going to be living from day to day. So our values, it's very important to us that we lift up our values because the values of how we run as an organization and the people that we are really speak to how we do the work. So integrity, accountability, respect, innovation, diversity, and then teamwork and collaboration. Our results count framework. So be results-based and data-driven. Again, we don't do anything unless the data tells us to do it. Bring attention to and act on disparities. We know a lot of communities have gotten to the point that they are because of policies and procedures and histories that many folks living today had no creation in, but we are still living in those things. And so we have to call a thing what a thing is. And so when we do that, we can start to pinpoint the strategies that will address those things. Using oneself as an instrument of change. This basically means who you are is enough to do this work. I'm loud, I'm excited, and that is how I excel in my particular role. And everyone else has all of the various things and their experiences that they bring to the work that makes them who they are, which makes us the organization that we are. Collaborative leadership. We do none of this alone. As we brought in this team from across the country, but we're hiring locally, but we're also going to depend on each and every one of you, residents, stakeholders, members of media. Everyone has a part in making sure that this project is not only successful for the folks that live in this community, but a standout for what can happen in the region when everyone works together. And then adaptive leadership. Sometimes we got to change that stinking thinking so that we can move forward in the way that we need to do. And then family support. That's the biggest service that we provide to the communities that we have the pleasure of partnering with. And so it is a very intense opportunity for us to really work with families, figure out what they want, not only for themselves, but for their children if they have some. We also want to look at what do they want to see in their communities. What do you all want to see 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And how can we support you now so that those things can happen and be actualized in your lives? Our goal is to arm residents with the tools and support needed to stabilize and or improve their housing situation. And again, when the housing situation is stabilized, everything else can kind of move in the direction that they would like. It is a two-way partnership, and we are so thankful that you all have brought us in to assist the families of Ridley and to impact the greater Marshall-Ridley Choice neighborhood. Thank you so much. We're going to hold questions for the end. And next up, we are going to have the neighborhood. And I think my... You. Well, tell the people who you are. How about that?
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm Derek Perry, Economic Development Manager in the city's Development Department. Excited to see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones as well. Going to talk through the neighborhood plan. The goals on this slide are the 5 goals that were identified to be implemented or to be strategized as part of the plan. So connectivity, economic development, neighborhood health, safety, and sense of place. Going to talk through a number of different projects in this slide portion. First, I'll start with the critical community improvements, and those are the parts of the C&I grant that are directly associated with the grant, with that grant funding. Then once we go through those 5 CCI projects, I'll talk through a number of other improvements that are underway within the neighborhood that you'll either have already seen or will be seeing in the next several coming months. So the first CCI is the creation of gateway elements at key entrances into the neighborhood, and 2 locations are contemplated for these improvements. The first is at the intersection of 25th Street and Jefferson Avenue, where that off-ramp meets Jefferson Avenue, and then the second location is at the corner of 39th and Marshall. You'll recall that this intersection is the location for the Cardinal Funeral Home project, and you can see a rendering there on the right side. And that property is about to close next week, so that'll get started pretty soon. Parallel to our work in C&I, North Star, I saw some folks from North Star here tonight, has been engaging in marketing and branding work for the city. Included in that work is recommendations on neighborhood signage and branding, and once that work's been completed, we're going to work at how we can leverage those recommendations and implement them at these 2 gateway locations. Additionally, North Star's been conducting additional focus groups. I think there were some earlier today and this week in the neighborhood to hear about the history in order to facilitate the naming of the new housing as well as some of the other associated amenities. I know they've been coordinating closely with members of the CAC as well as the city's communications team. Another CCI project that many folks are excited about is the seafood market. This new facility is planned to be located at the head of the Seafood Industrial Park at the intersection of 12th Street and Jefferson Avenue. Over the past year, we worked with Hill Studio to help with visioning for this space and how it would work and function as well as what it could possibly look like. We worked closely for the work group for this CCI and conducted a number of surveys as well as facilitated a workshop here at Downing Gross last summer. I'll pause there just for a moment. On each of these CCI projects, we have work groups that are comprised of city staff, housing authority team members, as well as members from the Citizen Advisory Committee to help really serve as a steering committee for each of these projects and have opportunities for involvement and engagement through each step of the implementation of these projects. You can see on the slide some of the sketches that were created for what would be a seafood-centric market with vendor stalls and kiosks. Hill Studio recommended that the market be anchored by a catering kitchen which would support on-site dining as well as commissary services. Ideally, that full-time caterer could serve as a manager for that space, but we're really seeing this as a location where someone can come, get food and drink, watch the working waterfront with all the boats coming in and out of the harbor there. With Hill Studios' scope now wrapped up, we're working on transitioning to securing a prospective operator manager for the space. So we're working on that now and hopefully be in a position to have a team in place by the end of the summer. Another exciting CCI project is the Health and Wellness Trail, and the primary trail segment will run from 18th Street all the way down to King Lincoln Park. And we're also looking at ways to support broader connectivity to the community, including the Sectra site, which you'll hear about later this evening. Most recently, we've been working with WRT, who developed a conceptual design for the Health and Wellness Trail through the Ridley site. And again, that's the section between 18th and 12th Street. In the next series of slides, I'll show different segments of the trail. So this is the section at the very, very top at 18th Street. You can see on the right some of the different placemaking amenities contemplated for each of these sections of trail. This slide shows the section that would go alongside the multifamily housing that Karen mentioned earlier. And then this section follows the site for the Early Childhood Development Center. Again, at the top is 16th Street, and then at the bottom would be a new 14th Street that'll be constructed between Jefferson Avenue and Ivy Avenue. You can see on the left side here different renderings for what that Early Childhood Development Center will look like. The design teams for the Early Childhood Center as well as for the Health and Wellness Trail have been coordinating closely to make sure that those two projects are seamless in how they transition from one to another. And again, that Early Childhood Center will be a partnership between Peak Child Care, which currently operates in Hampton, as well as Virginia Peninsula Community College, the city, and a number of other partners. I think the most exciting part of this trail is the section that's going to be from 14th to 12th Street. Through the work, this block between 14th and 12th will be dramatically transformed, especially compared to what was there with the former waterfront lumber site, for those of you that remember what that looked like before it got torn down. With the housing redevelopment, there's going to be a significant amount of new stormwater infrastructure needed. And the city housing authority worked with the designers to leverage that physical infrastructure need to create an asset and create a water feature centerpiece of the block that'll have a flowing stream, a number of overlooks. When married with the trail system and the landscaping, this will be a park amenity in the heart of the CNI neighborhood, serving as a benefit for both residents as well as visitors to the community. Some city staff has noted that this will be the city's 37th park. What isn't shown on these slides is the proximity to the new housing that's going to be developed. Just on the other side of this new spine road is the replacement housing that'll be developed as part of the new Ridley site. We'll begin soon on the design for the Bates Drive section of trail, which will go from 12th to 6th Street. City's engineering department was successful in its application for funding from the state's Transportation Alternatives Program. So we got a little over $764,000 to support that segment of projects. So we're looking at how we can layer funds to help support these projects and make them as most as they can be. And again, once this is all complete, this is going to be a great amenity for the neighborhood, both residents, visitors, and the surrounding community. We understand from Pittsburgh's CNI experience that they had a lot of success with deployment and implementation of a residential facade improvement grant. We incorporated that into our CCI efforts after hearing the success that they had, and really with the goal of improving the quality, the aesthetic appeal of homes in the neighborhood, while also working to increase property values and equity wealth for homeowners in the community, especially those that had dealt with some of the impacts of being near the distressed public housing over the years. At a high level, we're looking at providing $20,000 grants to owner-occupied homes within the CNI footprint. The funding would be able to be used for eligible exterior improvements to the homes. The city's working with the housing authority on how the admin and implementation of that program would function. So stay tuned for more information about that program. But we're really excited about the impact that this program in particular is going to have, particularly at pushing investment into the neighborhood, particularly the single-family residential that's in the CNI footprint. The last CCI is the rehabilitation of 2510 Jefferson Avenue to support commercial activity within the neighborhood. This building is the one directly next to and attached to the offices at 25 and J. The vision for the building is to rehabilitate it, preserve the historic facade. What we'll end up doing is keeping that facade, much like 25 and J. The structure of the building's not in very good shape, as you can see in the photos. So it'll be pretty much a new building behind that facade. We were also excited, when we mentioned grant funding earlier, we received $250,000 from the state's Port Host Community Revitalization Fund and another $250,000 from the Industrial Revitalization Fund, both administered by the state to help support this program. This is a concept developed for what the building could look like once it's new. We're working with work program architects who are based out in Norfolk to help with the design for the rehabilitation of this building. WPA has done a number of rehabilitations of similar old commercial structures, as well as had experience with Selden Market in Norfolk, if y'all are familiar with that space. Building has a small footprint to work with, but we're going to leverage WPA's creativity to have the best use of this space. We hosted 2 open houses to share some of the concepts yesterday evening as well as Tuesday, so we appreciate the folks that were able to come out, share their input. We got a lot of good feedback through those sessions, so this is going to keep moving along. Hopefully design should be wrapped up in the fall and be in a position to bid and start construction by the first part of next year. So transitioning now away from the CCIs to other neighborhood improvements. There are 2 projects underway for the former Harbert Dickerson site. City and Housing Authority staff are coordinating with Virginia Housing on the IndieDwell project, and as a reminder, IndieDwell manufactures housing using cold-rolled steel, and that project's anticipated to generate around 200 jobs. We're working through with Virginia Housing on the details of really how that transaction will get structured. The other project is the S23 Holdings expansion project. The S23 is in site plan review now for the development of this first block down between 14th and 17th Street, and we're anticipating that they'll close on the property sale in June of this year. So once we hit June into late summer through the fall, we'll expect to see some activity on that site as they begin developing their headquarters and office or warehouse space there. Just as a reminder, the first block also includes here the development of a marine trades training facility. Jorge Rivera is the owner of S23, has a deep passion for supporting workforce training, supporting folks in the community, and giving job opportunities, training opportunities to those that are interested. So he's anxious to get that facility in particular up and running, especially so it can support his operations across Terminal Avenue at the property he has at 1201 Terminal Avenue. This property may be very familiar to some of you all. This is the former Paul's Auto property at the intersection of 14th Street and Terminal Avenue. City authorized purchase of that property in October of last year and closed on it shortly thereafter. We're working now to get an assessment of all the real junk that's on the property. There's just a bunch of debris from the various items that were stored there. So getting that assessed, evaluated, so then we can go through and clean up that site, get all that debris removed and hauled away, and get back to a attractive, clean site. This is particularly important with the proximity that this property has to the seafood and market improvements that we're going to be doing at the SIP, as well as its proximity to the Ridley site. Very quickly, I want to touch on some of the new tenants at the Seafood Industrial Park. You can see a number of different businesses that have taken occupancy in the SIP over probably the last 18 months. There's a really nice mix of businesses at the Seafood Park, ranging from welding to trawler companies, and that mix of uses has allowed the SIP to be a self-sustaining business area, and we're glad to see that that's reinforced with these new tenants. More importantly, with the new tenants, many have chosen to make aesthetic improvements to their properties. You can see in the slides some before and after photos of the property improvements. These photos here show the old Casey Seafood properties and the improvements that have been made. And then this slide shows the before and after for the Old Point packing property. And these, as well as a few others, have had a marked impact on that corridor of Jefferson Avenue. Chase Packaging is another project that's been underway for a while. All of the above ground and below ground storage tanks have been removed, as well as the 200,000 square foot concrete slab. The sites have since been filled and graded. There's some last remaining soils testing that's underway, and the draft voluntary remediation plan for that site's being prepared for submission to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, with the plans that be submitted this summer. And pending any revisions to that plan, to that report, that plan's going to drive what the parameters we'll have to work with for the redevelopment of that site going forward. And again, this property is going to be a key piece of how we continue to build upon the transformation with these other projects that we've talked about tonight. Very quickly, a few updates on Brooks Crossing. We understand G&S Beauty Supply is interested in expanding its presence. And then you all know Marco's Pizza recently opened at Brooks. And then Fresenius Medical Care is going to be constructing a new building in one of the out parcels at Brooks Crossing. That project site plans have been approved, and you can see the construction fencing there now. The offices at 2, 5, and J opened at the end of May last year, so we're quickly coming up on the one-year birthday for the offices. The mix of private offices, shared offices, and dedicated desks quickly filled up, much due to the work of Ray Ransom, who you heard about earlier. There are 26 businesses utilizing the space, ranging from janitorial services to accounting services. There's a waiting list for space, so when space has come available, it's been quickly filled. 2, 5, and J recently started hosting webinar sessions on assorted topics. You can see on the slide here some of the different topics that have been addressed through those webinars. And then recently, I guess in February, the EDA began accepting applications for a micro enterprise grant, and that is a $3,500 grant available to eligible micro businesses. The funding for that program is in part provided by funding from the Virginia Statewide Business District Resurgence Grant. The EDA was a recipient of $86,000 from that program, and a portion of those funds were used to support this program. Funds are available to micro businesses or business owners. Within the target geography, which is shown on the slide, it's all of the southeast community, and then the small site in downtown or Overtown where the C&I replacement housing would be going. Funds are available to micro businesses for costs such as marketing, advertising expenses, equipment, computer hardware, other typical business costs. Additional information about the program, including the application, is available on the Development Department's website and at the link here. Funding is available on a first-come, first-served basis, so we're encouraging folks to get their applications in. And if anyone has any questions on that in particular, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. And that is all that I had for the neighborhood update. And I think now is when we're going to do questions for the broader team.
Yes, so this is now the time that if you have any questions about the people, the neighborhood, or the housing, the floor is now open. So, are there any questions?
Even though I've been listening to everything, I'm college educated, I've had my own business. But whenever I drive around all the new development, the first thing that comes into my head, this isn't for me. I'm not going to be included. I'm not going to qualify. I'm going to be left on the side. And with all of your presentations, the one thing I've noticed that is missing is we've not addressed the consequences of generations and generations of oppression and being unwelcome and not included. So that what tends to happen is the people that you generally do want to help don't feel that we could make it. So you're going to still be helping the same cluster of people, because even the starting line, we're so far back. Because I think what you need to include in all of these beautiful ideas is you have to understand that with all the oppression and racism and institutionalized state systems, and those of us that went to college and it turned out to be like a piece of toilet paper, worthless, and that area, if it's not addressed, you have to go beyond building pretty houses and go to the soul of the pain that exists. There's so much animosity and anger that's not being dealt with, and it doesn't matter how pretty the facade is, unless we are willing to get real down and dirty and address those realities, you're going to have business as usual, and it's going to look good on the what's that thing called? That line that, you know, it's going to look good statistically, but it's not going to be the people that really need to benefit from it that are going to benefit. I've forgotten her name, the young lady that's walking right now. She has diligently made sure that more people get to know about what's happening at Brooks Crossing. Because again, if you're going to change things, you have to address the ugliness of what's happening. You have to have more programs on mental health. We haven't really developed a mental health system that helps people recover from racism, which is ludicrous in a country that's steeped in it. You can't go to a therapist and get assistance to deal with being oppressed by a system, schools, churches, businesses. So we need to address that. There's trauma. You've got people that have moved out of difficult situations. You've got rape that we're not dealing with. There's misogyny. The buildings are pretty, but if you want to help the people that are held down by this pain, we have to start looking at it. We've got misogyny, sexism, racism. And I ask you to start looking at changing, saying we're going to help families, and saying we're going to help people. So many of us are single. We ain't got no family. And so you've already left us out of the march. Because you're thinking, what about me? Do I have to go get a kid or find a man? I already tried that and I lost my house because of it. So if we can change some of the narrative to, as you said, we've got to move forward with the reality that exists. COVID has exemplified the fact that there has been problems and we haven't been able to close our eyes to it. And now even the people that used to pretend can't pretend because they said, shoot, this is ugly. And so if we're not going to be willing to go beyond the talking head, you have to have meetings where we discuss how we're going to address the parents that are angry with their kids because they're doing 3-4 jobs at minimum wage. I helped a neighbor so she wouldn't keep screaming at her child, and she said, I've got 4 jobs. The child is 4 years old and 2 years old. She's not a happy mom. And we need to find things that we can do for that. We need to have museums. I shouldn't have to try to go all the way to places that I can't get to. Mariners Museum. Your communities need to be bursting with life, similar to what the infrastructures of successful communities are. Fish markets are great, but when I was a child growing up in England, I remember every Saturday going to the museum. I remember being able to go to the art gallery. I'm articulate because those things were not by zip code, but they were available to everyone. And I was living in Charles Dickens' squalor, living on mattresses in one room with cardboard on the window. But because I was given a soul of opportunities, then I was able to have the opportunity to become someone. So your buildings are great, your facades are wonderful, but please deal with the fact that you're dealing with broken down, beaten down people who have been maligned for generations. And there's too much pain, and it has to be addressed if you want this to be amazing. And it can be amazing, but let's stop pretending. Americans use a slogan when you need to do action. So let's do action and let's address these issues. It's not a question, it's a statement, and I hope you have heard me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I definitely agree. I think the way that we move as an organization, we definitely agree in naming the things that have traditionally been a part of the issue in a lot of the communities that we work in around the country. And so with voices like yours, with voices like your neighbors, those that think that they are not educated enough, we need all voices at the table. Everyone has lived experiences that will allow us to make a better community, not only now and in the future. And when we say families, understanding not everybody has children, but we want to make sure that the community is stable and thriving so that you can leave a legacy of whatever that legacy is for. Nieces, nephews, neighborhood children that you've raised as your own. So understand when we say children and families, we mean everyone in the community.
So please put in people, because I'm not a family, I'm a people, a person.
Duly understood.
And what you said is beautiful, like what did you share that I'm tired of being told family, because I don't have a family.
Very much
Yeah,
so.
just people.
Thank you so much. Are there other questions? All righty.
My question is, just to all the facilities that you were showing today, are there going to be any types of after-school programs or community centers for our youth?
That is a really good question. As far as for the people portion of it, we're taking all of those kind of questions and suggestions from the community, working with the partners to make sure that what folks want to see here, whether it's community space or programs, things of that nature, are brought into the community. Can't say yes, it's going to be built right here on the corner, but what we are saying is that we are going to listen to the community. We're going to make sure that the services and the things that the community is asking for is being addressed.
But I think you can say, we will touch on that momentarily at our next presentation. So the one that will be following the CNI.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm a Vietnam vet. Excuse me. I'm a Vietnam vet. I served in the Army in the 70s, the early 70s. Now, about 20 years ago, an NFL football player, Aaron Brooks, he made a promise to build up buildings around this area of East End, do a lot of building from Lincoln Park all the way down. He would do a fabulous job. Did he fulfill his obligation? Aaron Brooks, put the NFL football. I don't think he did, because it still looked the same to me.
He's been involved in the Brooks Crossing development, so he has participated in that work.
Because I'm a musician also. We played in the banquet right here in here. We played a banquet for him, and he spoke about 15 to 20 years, 50 years ago. And I heard him speak about he's going to redevelop a lot of houses and put buildings, supermarkets in East End. But did he fulfill his obligation?
Well, what I can speak to that, I'm Tina Vick, I'm the councilwoman. What I can speak to that on is when he submitted the plan was in 2007 or 8. I was just getting in office, but what happened, he did have plans for housing, but if you all can remember, we had a slump in the housing market. So what he had planned to do would not be feasible because the market, the real estate market was not the same. So that way, so after that he worked with the city, and so we changed the scope of, we worked with him to change the scope of what had happened in the area. So it was not, it did not get completed as he originally designed it, but what we have now was some of the things that our city worked with him on.
All righty, 2 more questions over here.
Yes, I have a couple of them. You mentioned something about single-family homes in the 16th to 18th Street area, maybe in the Ivy Avenue area also too. Number one, what would be the prices of those homes? And the people living in that particular area now, will they be able to afford those homes? And number two, historically, we know about the problem with the terminal and coal dust that has existed in that area. What is the city planning to do to minimize the effects of coal dust in that particular area? Now, coal dust not only affects the air that we breathe, but it also affects water. There was a group of us, Dawud Muhammad, Abdul Nazim, and myself. We tested the water in the southeast community for about 5 years. We sent those results to the Department of Environmental Quality, and the liaison that the city had for that was sent to the city. One of the areas that we tested was right on 12th Street. And some of you may remember when we tested that particular area, it was so toxic that we called it the death ditch. We found out that, I think the HRSC fixed that area. It wasn't water, it was a sewage pipe that was broke, and they fixed that area. So city's plan, what are your plans to minimize the effects of cold dust coming in that area? You can build new homes in there, but the cold dust is still coming through. And about 4 years ago, there was an article in the Daily Express talking about the effect of the sandblasting that the shipyard does that affects variant is deadly toxic. So they do the sandblasting at night. That travels it. Who was it, the other week or so, there was a forum or something at Delmar Irwin, and they talked about that, but the city doesn't do any air monitoring. They don't do that. The only place that does the air monitoring is Langley. So those are some of the questions that I have. How are you going to minimize the effects of coal dust in that area? You're going to build new homes in that area. And the last one is, you mentioned about the packaging plant of the Arkel bag. That area used to be tapped as a brownfield. I saw on your view there that you was doing some testing, some man testing. Is it still a brownfield?
So
Is it ground safe enough or what?
So with Chase Packaging, that's the work that we've been doing is working to correct that. So there were underground storage tanks at the property, some challenges with the soils, and through this work that we've been doing between tearing up the concrete slab, getting those tanks out, both the above ground and below ground tanks, those are all being removed. So the work that we're doing as part of the voluntary remediation program is correcting all of those issues, testing the soils after the fact to make sure that they're within the appropriate levels managed by DEQ. And with that voluntary remediation plan, that'll get sent to DEQ, they'll review it, look at the test results, and then work with us on what the action plan or how you can develop and use that property in the future based on the parameters that came back from the soils testing. So the work that we're doing there and have been doing there over the past probably over a year now, has been to address that brownfield site and get it back to a developable, safe state.
Those are all the questions that I have right now.
So I'd like to address your first question relative to the single-family home. I can't tell you what the sales price is going to be because, as you know, there's a lot of volatility in the housing market right now. And we're looking at probably starting that construction within the next year and a half or 2 years. But the plan is that those houses will be priced to be affordable. And again, I know that's a relative term because affordable to somebody over here may not be affordable to somebody over here. But the plan is that they would be affordable housing. I can't, at this point, there's some single-family home development going on in the southeast community, and the new construction is going for about $225, $235. Right now, interest rates are still relatively low. I remember when I bought my first house back many, many years ago, the interest rate was 13%. People don't believe that anymore, and that makes a huge difference on the sale of the house, on the sales price, based on what the interest rate is. So those things are a little bit hard to predict, a year, 2 years out. But the intention is that they will be housing much like Madison Heights that we built along the acre block of 28th Street. So, and that, not necessarily that same design, because the plan is that the garage would be to the rear. But still that quality, which is an excellent quality home, and it should be affordable for first-time buyers. And there is some air quality. Go ahead.
But I think what we don't want to do, or we aren't doing it, Karen has said from the beginning, we're not making people think that if you at the lowest income from public housing, that the home ownership option, we got our Department of Human Services working with people on credit and connecting them to jobs. Some people may qualify for it, but some people may not. That's why we're dealing with this project with options. You have the people at one end that will qualify for public housing. Some people at a little higher rate, they might be working at a job a little above minimum wage, so they can qualify for the higher price townhome. And then there will be those people who want to continue to stay in our neighborhood, but they have worked their way up to a higher position on a job or whatever, and they've been working on their credit, and they're ready to be in the homeownership arena. So we're creating a mixed income community.
Absolutely.
Which will help us be, you know, so many people have been saying over the years I've been in office, so many people have been talking about, you know, what we need down here. We definitely need a pharmacy. But what happens in communities, if everybody's income is low, we cannot attract the amenities. So we've devised a plan to be able to have a housing choice to diversify the incomes so that businesses want to come in our community.
We have one question here, and then we can get two here, and then we'll move on, Madam Moderator.
Most definitely.
One question here.
Good evening. My question was about the 24 houses for sale. How many would be designated for seniors? And will seniors have a section where we can designate these homes just for seniors, where houses all on one floor, and that they will be handicap accessible as far as the shower, in and out of doorways, to make sure that the frame of the door is wide enough just in case.
We're definitely addressing the accessibility. We have to. We're exceeding the requirements in our rental housing. We're not designating any of the specific single-family homes for seniors, because what we'd like to do is make sure that, you know, none of our builders are going to be building on spec. If they're going to be building a house, they're going to wait for somebody to come buy it. That we would have buyers who qualify, they build a house. So if a senior qualifies to purchase a new home, and they would work with the builder to design a home that meets their needs. So that's certainly an opportunity. Could be an opportunity in what we're doing. But in the rental housing, we are more than exceeding the number of units that need to be accessible. All of them will be what they call visitable, meaning that if your daughter and grandchildren lived at one of the units, that there would be a way for you to be able to get in and to the apartment so you could go visit there as well.
Thank you so much for your question.
I've been hearing you mention about entrepreneurship. What do y'all have in mind concerning the entrepreneurship?
So there's a number of new retail spaces that are going to be developed between the Phase 1 housing buildings that are getting built right now, should be done in the fall. I think there's two 1,500 square foot units between those two buildings going up. We mentioned 2510 earlier, and then the multifamily housing will also have new retail space as part of that. So as part of the housing, the neighborhood plans, we're working to increase really retail inventory for new businesses that want to have a storefront within the community. The Department of Development and the EDA have a number of small business loan programs available to help support folks either getting started or folks that are established that need some financing. And it sounds like USI might have some opportunities available too. So we encourage folks that are interested in entrepreneurship, want to start a business, please reach out to us. We talked a little bit about the offices at 25 and J earlier, so that's low-cost office space that has all the amenities that folks would need as they're growing their business. So there's a number of opportunities available. If you're interested in starting a business or know someone, please send them to us and we can work to get you started.
The other thing on that site, directly across from the multi-story building at Ridley, the EDA is reserved that 200-foot strip from 14th up to 17th.
Yep.
So there could potentially in the future be some opportunities there for some commercial development as well.
And the reason why I asked, because, you know, I'm a dry cleaner by trade. I just came back in the business about 2 years ago, right in the midst of COVID. Right now, one of the only black dry cleaners down in DC. But I remember back in the day, we had everything we needed right here in this community.
Absolutely.
And I would love to see it go back. We had shoe stores, dry cleaners, laundromats. I mean, Jefferson Avenue and Washington Avenue was booming. Anything you need, you'd have to go to Timbuktu to get it. It was in the hood. It was right here in the neighborhood. And I just would love to see it and see what type of opportunities you're going to be able to present to people like myself that just, you know, coming back in business, those that want to get started. And then, like I concur and agree with the lady, you know, we got to start training And because a lot of older dry cleaners are gone, and people that was in big shoe stores, Mr. Eve, all them shoe repair, them people dead and gone. We got to train some folk, and ain't many people left to train these folks to know about our trade. So I'm concerned about a lot of stuff in our community. All this look good, but I just hope, you know, we be able to enjoy what we see. And, you know, I'm concerned about a few more other things, but I just hope everything works out. So we're open and praying, you know, so but everything looks good.
Thank you so much for your comment and your question.
Yes, I have a question. Are they going to be doing work from, what does it say, Terminal and 30th to 39th, Jefferson, Madison? Because there's homes there behind the old liquor store. There's a couple vacant lots in the block. Do they have a plan for anything going on in the 600 block?
There will also be, you know, Derek talked about the facade improvement program. That's going to be available throughout the CNI neighborhood for folks to do improvements to their outside of their house. But the Housing Authority also has some rehab programs that can address interior, so we may, in situations, need to marry those two up and do that. And then also, part of, you know, I failed to mention as part of my discussion, we are building 24 single-family homes along the Ridley area, but we're also, part of CNI is utilizing some of those vacant lots throughout the Southeast community to build some additional new single-family homes on those buildable 50-foot wide lots.
Okay, is there an age limit for that, to get into that plan, that program, to build a home on vacant lots?
There's no age limit. It's
To the owner, is there any requirements that can be spoken on?
well, for the requirement to own a home.
He already owned the land to build.
So if you own the land to build and you wanted to secure a builder to build on your lot,
Yes, say, is there grants there, or there, you know, anything that's going to be available for him? Say it's me, a senior, on family land, wants to go on, since the community is building up, build a home on that lot.
we do not have a specific program for that, but I think we could talk to you about what the resources are to make that sort of thing happen, because you already have equity there because you already own the land.
Already own the land.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can talk, we don't have a specific program designed for that.
For
But that's sort of thing that we can certainly talk to you about and try to help you figure that out.
I can do one last question.
Hey, my name is Brandon Davis. I'm a senior at Christopher Newport University, and I just was curious. You mentioned in one of your goals is to improve or I guess address the food insecurity of the area. But other than the seafood market, I didn't hear a whole lot about how you plan to do that. Just kind of like to know a little more.
That's a really good question. So with community meetings and advocates talking through with our partner, service partner network to look at what actually can be brought here. There's already a lot of great resources already here in the community. And so really talking with neighbors, talking with stakeholders to see what the community like. Is it finding a grocer who would bring something to the neighborhood? Is that an entrepreneur that wants to have a food truck or whatever that looks like? So we can't say this is what's going to happen for the community, but what we can say is we're going to activate the partner network and also activate the residents and our stakeholders to really see what is possible and what folks would like to see here. Is there others that...
Well, I just want to add to that too, because I don't know if you noticed coming here, if you noticed the Piggly Wiggly grocery store, which was developed jointly between the Department of Economic Development and the Redevelopment Housing Authority using New Markets tax credits, because, I mean, this was totally a food desert before that was built. And while it doesn't address all the needs of the community, it certainly addressed some of those needs. And we'll be working along with this whole process to determine what do we need to do to supplement that area work.
And I'll also add that we are fortunate in that we do have a community garden source. We've got a number of...
Excuse me, sir, you're hard to understand with the mask.
I understand, ma'am. So we are fortunate in that we have a number of our CNI partners that are working together on a community garden. And so that has been established for the last couple of years. They're doing great work.
It is growing by leaps and bounds every year. They're now selling the produce within the community. So we can certainly provide that information. We're hoping to build upon that. We love additional involvement in that community garden. So that is certainly an area that we hope to address that concern you have.
All right. So thank you all so much for all of your questions. There will be opportunities for folks to kind of mix and mingle after the meeting is over, but I want to keep moving this along, so thank you so much. Next on our agenda is the Southeast Community Resource Area presentation, and so I'm going to call up Ms. Sheila McAllister and Quinn Evans, consultants.
Oh, thank you for that warm welcome. It's so nice to see everyone here tonight. Thank you all for coming out. So glad that you felt that this was something that was so important that you took this time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. So since you decided to come, we felt like this was an excellent opportunity to also present the proposal for the Southeast Community Resource Area. It's never been presented to the community before. It has been presented to council and to the school board. I also would like to thank the Huntington alumni, because I can say that without the Huntington alumni, I probably wouldn't be standing here today talking about this proposal. Because in 2017, Huntington Middle School closed. And what was being proposed was just to demolish the school and move the kids. And the alumni really pushed to try to do something to keep Huntington in the Southeast community. And even though this plan may not be everything that the Huntington alumni wanted to see, however, it addresses what was really important to the alumni, and that was to preserve the building. Could not preserve the entire building because the building has at least 6 different additions attached to it, and it's hard to maneuver around that building. But what needed to really be preserved was the original building that was built, the original 3-story building. And so that's what this plan proposes. In 2018, the schools did a proposal to look at the possibility of replacing Huntington Middle School in the Southeast community. But that plan was to demolish the building and put up a 21st century middle school, because the schools really want to see a 21st century middle school that addresses, I think it's STEAM, I think that's what they call it, STEAM. Not STEM.
Going STEAM with the arts.
Yeah, it's STEAM. Okay. So, with that, the worst thing you could do is have a planner on your planning team. Because I continue to ask, you know, this is a 7-block area. It has an old recreation center that really needs to be rebuilt. This is an opportunity to do a master plan. Why not master plan the entire 7-block area? Understanding that that wasn't something that the schools were really that interested in. They were really interested in replacing that middle school, which I definitely understand. But as a planner, I was looking at what we were doing in the Choice neighborhood, all the redevelopment that was presented to you tonight, and how this would dovetail on that. This is not in the Choice neighborhood. However, it is right outside of the Choice neighborhood, and it would be a major, major catalyst to redeveloping all of the Southeast community. So what we will be presenting tonight is what came out of that master planning process. What I have with me, the consultants that worked on the master plan, Quinn Evans, and Charles Tilley will start off the presentation, and then Allison Powell will follow, and Chuck Way.
Right. You can tell me anything you want.
We'll do something. But hopefully you all embrace the proposal. I think it's an excellent proposal. I think the community will get from this everything that I feel the community needs. It has a library right now that is too small for the community. It gets maximum usage. It needs more space, more square footage. We need a new community center. We definitely need a new community center. This addresses that. And in the end, you get a brand new 21st century middle school. So I will allow the consultants to present the proposal, but I just kind of wanted to introduce it, and hopefully you like it.
Can everybody see okay over here? I'm blocking the way. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. We wanted to share the, as Sheila said, the Southeast Community Resource Area Master Plan. And as she's already introduced us, one of our other associates who was not able to be here tonight, but is very integral to the process, is Nikita Reed, and she is a historic preservation architect. That's one of Quinn Evans' specialties, so that was something that's very important to us as a part of this work, really thinking about the community and the value of the history of this community and how to take that forward to the next generation. We started working with an executive advisory committee, which was made up of city leadership as well as school leadership. And they developed a vision statement for this project that was based on the information that had been brought forward, as Sheila mentioned, a couple of studies that have been done and the community engagement that had happened. And that goal was to create a 21st century one-stop shop that supports all residents, educating the mind, body, and spirit, and creates a distinctive community gathering place. It's really about creating a place that brings all of these things together for the community. As Sheila mentioned, I'll briefly touch on this. The Newport News Public Schools had done a very good process of thinking through what a 21st century 600-student middle school would look like for this community. And we're using that as a background. That also included the community engagement component that the schools did to talk about what the community wanted to see in the school. And then the city took on a master plan study after that to talk about what might need, what could happen here in this community. So of those two studies, really the takeaways that we had were the middle school should be a new space for next generation learning environments that honors the past and inspires the future. The community facility should be co-located to provide opportunities to access all of these resources together. The school desired the middle school to be a separate building while being co-located on this site. Excuse me. And then the historic facade of the Huntington School be preserved for the history of the community. So through that process that we've been through, really meeting with the advisory committee. We had multiple meetings with representatives of city, Newport News schools, and the community. We had detailed program meetings with the Miller Community Center, the Bailey Library, and the Huntington Middle School staff, as well as the community organization that operates the Scott Center. So those were really detailed discussions about what's needed in the space. And then we visited the site and did detailed surveys of the buildings and all of the site information. So we've gathered a lot of detail about the buildings. So out of all those meetings and conversations, we really came up with 5 guiding principles. The community was really about recognizing and celebrating the sense of pride that this type of community facility can bring and the investment that it can foster to promote the future of the community. Heritage is really about recognizing the Southeast community's rich history and telling that story in a new place. Connectivity is really about connecting the multi-generational opportunities of children, adults, and senior adults, and also about connecting the different components, the library, the community center, as well as the school all have resources that can be shared and be more opportunities for people to have access to those things. And then wellness, as everybody knows, even before COVID, wellness was a huge component of the types of work we do as designers of schools and community facilities, really thinking about how do we create healthy buildings and healthy places for people. And then the last one is kind of what we're talking about tonight a little bit with the economic development, but this building really, the facility, the campus, really could promote a catalyst for creating more interest in redevelopment in the Southeast community. And a very important part of the Southeast fabric has been the legacy of Huntington High School, as we know. In almost every discussion, we know that the community feels very strongly about the part that the campus has played in so many lives around the Southeast community. Since the 1930s, the original Huntington High School has supported generations of students around academic and personal achievement and development. And why that's important is that the community, as it develops over time, the high school really developed as the center of the community, where in high schools in communities like this, in an urban area where high schools are very accessible, the site really becomes a very important part of the community. This is one of the earlier shots of the school. One way of doing that is to preserve a piece of the existing building fabric. The section here that's the original high school, something we started focusing on. And as you know, the building has evolved over the years with a multiple series of additions. And preservation is really about managing the change of a building from one use or the next use, from one to another. As we present the master plan, you'll see the ways that we've started to think about how to engage that component of the existing building in a new facility on this campus.
Okay. So when we started really diving into what the master plan conceptual design could be, we used the word campus a lot through the design process, because a goal of the project was not simply to create design buildings, but to really imagine a community resource area that has a value greater than the sum of its parts. So the current site, as you can see here, is composed mostly of the large expansive middle school on one end, and then the Dory Miller Community Center on the other end. Surrounded, of course, by mostly single-family residential and townhomes in an area that is already very walkable and central to the Southeast community. The master plan really taps into that idea of a campus and creates a space that brings together the middle school, the community center, the library, all around this active green space that connects and engages the community. The plan is organized by two buildings, the community building on the end at 35th Street here, and then the middle school on the opposite end of the site. They are tied together through walking paths and this arching pedestrian boulevard bordered by green spaces and various activity zones. So as we zoom into each area of the plan, you can see in a little more detail, this side of the block at 35th Street is anchored by the community building. It includes a portion of the historic Huntington High School that Charles was just talking about. You can see that outlined in orange, kind of towards the top of the image. And this will be incorporated into the design of the rest of the building. The community building opens up onto this plaza that you can see here that will include a new splash park and playground and connect to the rest of the green spaces, which are located here in the center. So the active green spaces include a new regulation-sized football field, which can be a multi-purpose field as well, sports courts for basketball and tennis, and other community spaces potentially for an amphitheater and community gardens, with, of course, ample parking to support all the needs of this space. On the right side of the plan along 28th Street is the middle school. The main entrance to the school will be along Orcutt Avenue, with a secondary student entrance along the side of the building with a buses-only access way that will connect to the plaza and the student access to the school. The school also maintains a private courtyard that can be a little bit more secure for outdoor classroom areas for the students. And so zooming back here, you can see the overall master plan. And now we're going to zoom in a little bit further to some of the buildings in a bit more detail.
My turn?
It's allergy season, so bear with me. I can't take enough medication, so I need some water here. I think that in my career, this is maybe the most ambitious, outrageous endeavor I've seen a city take on. It's an incredible opportunity, and the City of Newport News is doing something extraordinarily remarkable. We are seeing, as architects and designers, communities co-locating educational facilities and community facilities together to bring synergies of opportunity for people of all ages and walks of life. So it's really about connecting people to each other to build community and to connect history to the future. And that's what this project is all about. The community building is, as Allison and Charles have pointed, which is the button? I'll mess this up. This is a kind of an aerial view, if you will, of the building. You can see that we tried to respect the heritage of Huntington High School. It is a primary element. It's the tallest of the structures around it. It's important that we treat that building with respect from a preservation point of view, and allow that building to have a celebratory moment inside to connect to the rest of the spaces. So this is the ground floor of the plan. This is the outline of the original school. The new Pearl Bailey Library will be off to one side, and will incorporate existing spaces within. I'm blocking you. I'm so sorry. I can sit right down here. I apologize. Down along 35th Street, we've got a new gym, which will be for recreational as well as competitive events. There is a new indoor pool, 6-lane indoor pool with a child pool as well. So you've got 2 pools in the building, and all of which then connect and can open up to the splash park, the splash pad that was it's on the outside. The nice thing about this orientation is that this is kind of north, so in the late afternoon and hot summer days, the building will give some shading, cooling effect to the splash pad. We're seeing the, in this corner, there's space for a community partner. And what we found through all the conversations with everyone in the community was that everyone was focused on teaching and educating kids and helping teens find their way through. And so there's so much focus in these programs on youth. But it's not just the youth, it's seniors, it's parents, it's families, it's individuals. There's opportunity in this building for everyone in this community. We know the value of public libraries, and we know the strength that they bring to communities. They help entrepreneurs find ways to be entrepreneurial. They allow seniors to connect with one another. So there are places in this development that everyone in this community can find a reason to use, and we're excited about that. So in the center of the space, there will be some point of arrival, both from Orcutt through Huntington, and from the south, if you will, through this open space, and over from some public parking that's along this edge of the property. We're seeing this kind of central zone to be somewhat of a community living room, a place where you can come with your family, you can have your teen go to a teen program with the community partner or in the library. One of your other children can go swim, you can take a yoga class, an exercise class. You can do everything here and in ways that you can't do now. And it's all about creating this will be the community's place. The library will be 21st century. It will have things that you don't have now in Pearl Bailey. There will be group study rooms for tutoring, for small groups together. There will be robust programs for seniors, children, and teens. There will be a digital maker lab. There will be a meeting space. There will be everything you can imagine in a first-rate 21st century library will be here within this complex. We're sad Nikita's not here tonight. Not only is she a historic preservation architect, she has been appointed or selected as one of the nation's top young emerging leaders in architecture. and she's remarkable. And her cold, which we hope is not, we hope it's only allergies and not the other thing, has kept her away from us. She's going to help us use the main floor of Huntington High as a way to interpret the legacy of the community and to celebrate that and connect that to everyone that comes to this building and to this site. We think there's some unique opportunities to do that, not just through static displays. There are ways to do that through digital curation of content, collecting data, and she's done a lot of that already, collecting that from the community and helping display that and helping celebrate that and connect people through multiple generations in that important historic space in the community. And we know there's a great pool there now, but you can't use it all year round. And the opportunity to have an indoor pool for exercise, for recreation, is just a remarkable, community benefit. Upstairs, we have a multi-story original school, so we've got the potential to reuse, rethink, repurpose those existing classrooms as community meeting spaces, shared by the community partner, shared by the Department of Parks and Rec, shared by the library. So the ability for those groups to collaborate, develop program and content that is coming into the community from various directions is just going to be realized in the spaces that you see, in the building now. That looks like the school, and I need some water, and I don't know which one is mine. Okay, I'll get some more water.
There's 3 of them.
All right. So just as exciting as the community building on the one end of the site is the middle school that's going to anchor the 28th Street end of the site. Throughout all of our community meetings, we heard how important it was for the middle school really to have its own place and have its own space that can be secure for the students, but also remain connected to the resources of this area. So although it's on one end of the site, students will be able to utilize the library, utilize the recreation facilities, the Cultural History Museum, but still have their own secure space. So the form of the school really starts to echo some of the elements from the historic building. We have an entry volume that will also be located along Orcutt Avenue with this kind of taller element drawing, creating a clear entry point and welcoming access for visitors, aligning with the cross street in a similar way that the historic building does on the other side. The concept design for the middle school is really focused on creating optimal learning environments to prepare students for advanced education. And being able to create a new construction school allows us an opportunity to create this 21st century environment, that we're not trying to plug in these elements into a building, a historic building, but we're able to create new spaces that are designed specifically for 21st century learning. So to orient you to the plan, we've got up here on Orcutt Avenue the entry, which is adjacent to the administration, creating a secure entry point for the school. We also have a forum area on this side, which will be an assembly space, also easily accessible to the public after hours for school events and assemblies. This side of the site really has more of the public functions, so that forum space, the dining commons, gymnasium, whereas the 28th Street end of the site is the academic houses where the classes and the learning communities are going to be. Let's see. The Learning Commons is located at the corner of the plan to be really very highly accessible to the entire school and especially to the academic houses. The space is going to provide agile and flexible furniture and infrastructure for technologies to really allow for interdisciplinary and project-based learning. The academic wing is going to be a 3-story structure, so each floor of this part of the school will house one grade level to really provide an opportunity to create those learning communities within each grade level. And each will include core academic spaces, specialized learning labs, collaborative commons, and teacher support spaces. The dining commons is located adjacent to the more public plaza, opening up onto the rest of the site to welcome students in, as this is really the primary student entrance from the bus area, and create that core and that opportunity for a school identity. This is one of the areas similar to the main entrance where the history of the school can also come back to live in this new school building. So although the historic school will have a lot of the elements of the actual building, there are opportunities here to bring some of that history over as well and to display so the legacy of the school can continue. The adjacent courtyard space, the private courtyard here in the center, will become an opportunity for learning, outdoor learning, and also provides a way to bring natural light into the core spaces of the building. So all of the classrooms and learning spaces will have windows and natural light. And finally, you can see here the second and third story of the academic house, which again will house each grade level on one floor.
Can I ask a quick question because I want to read? Sure. Is there any possibility as you all move forward that you start to include more racial, cultural diversity? Everything looks so permanently white, sterile, like an impotent white male. And there's no cultural vibe. There's no identity for all the different ritual cultures that exist in this country and in this city. You've got to be thinking squares and triangles and metals, and state-of-the-art should not eliminate state of the beauty of our cultures and our richness, and just giving me a mural does not do it. I want rhythm, and I want groove. I want to feel like I belong here too. So all of these amazing ideas, when you're thinking of them, you're still making culture an afterthought, and you're still using the same templates of the square, and there's no soul to it. And you're sort of pleasing your desire to do something good, but not bringing us to the table at the beginning so it could reflect that energy of people that come from all over the world. The Jamaican people, like my people, the people from Afghanistan, everybody, your architecture needs to change to reflect more of us.
Yeah.
I got free dinner, so I'm no longer, what's that thing called? Food insecure. So I got my food for the week. But I'm begging you to stop being so patriarchal in your state-of-the-art concept of what people want. No child wants to run into some of these people, these communities, when you run into these places. You go to Spruce's Corner, you got this vibe of, you know, you're in a neighborhood where there's a soul to it, there's life to it. Start talking to the people as people and include us. I'm not at the table if you bring me only for the desserts, okay? And I know you're proud of yourself and you feel good, but I want to see diversity with integrity so that your architecture doesn't look all the way from downtown up to Oyster Point like some white man that doesn't have good terms with his wife. I'm serious.
Well, thank you for your comments.
I told them that yesterday. Sammy's eyes were as big as saucers. So don't bring me at the end. Bring me at the beginning, and don't be afraid of us.
Well, and I will say, you know, we're
We're at the beginning.
No, you're showing me all that you've come up with already.
These are just initial concepts and masses. There's no materiality inside. We are here to hear.
Yeah, and so what I'm hoping that you'll hear is, I want to come and feel sometimes that I am there too, and that somebody hasn't done me a favor.
Thank you so much for your comments and concerns. Can you please make sure that we have your information so that when
Yes,
they have
I
more
can.
community input meetings, that we make sure that you get that information, as well as others that have thoughts about how these planning efforts can kind of move forward.
I definitely will.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But now I'm not going to walk, don't look at me, I'm going to walk like a drunk because I have MS. And I'm not trying to be sexy, but I'd love to look cute.
That's our presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
All righty. So now we will open the floor to questions. I have two questions over here. I'll start with the lady, please.
I just have one question because I am familiar with the Huntington area. George Miller, and we also have Pearl Building Library. How would that affect with this new development? Will they still remain as they are, or are they gonna be moved, renamed, or what's gonna happen? Because you know, if you are familiar with the area, you know that George Miller also has a swimming pool and an area for activities for And what about the hospital? So that's going to remain the same.
And it's been renovated. The old Whitaker Hospital's been renovated.
All right, and there was another question at the table.
Okay.
Okay.
So these blocks gonna be combined? So, you know, where's, you know, 28th Street, you know what I'm talking about, like, with 28th Street right down through there, it's gonna be integrated, you know?
28th Street is going to stay, 35th Street will stay, 30th Street will
It's
be.
gonna be,
That's the bus crossing.
okay, so that would be done away with, so you can
Right,
come.
so it'll be one campus.
Okay. Is this just the idea or this is the actual?
This is not just an idea. As a matter of fact, demolition on Doris Miller will start at the end of this year. This is not an
So
idea.
this is still on
The school will be open in 2024.
Oh, wow.
We're in the process of developing these more. This is very early in this.
Yeah, these are just concepts. These are not the design.
Right. Okay. We're going to have future meetings for that.
I have a question. What about, you said the library per building is going to be for adults and students?
Yes, the library will be the same library that you have today in the community. It's just going to be larger and relocated.
Okay, but.
There will still be a separate library in the middle school.
Well,
They will have,
yes, sir.
they'll have their
It's not
own.
part of the
Okay,
middle
okay,
school.
Yeah.
that's very good. Thank you.
So doors, so the per bed is still will remain, or?
Pearl Family will remain, but not at its current location. That building will be used for something else.
Do you have an idea of what it would be used for?
No.
Will there be a track?
Yes, there will.
Field, or will there be how do you say it, like a regulated track?
No, there will be, the track will be the sidewalk as you walk around the 7 block area. This is going to be a regulation football field.
But not a regulation track?
No. No, but all throughout this 7 block area, you have walking trails. Because you're connecting one building to the other building, so you're going from north, south, east, west, all throughout that campus.
Right, we have this pedestrian way through the center that then connects back through. So it is a circular loop, a walking loop.
I don't think she's done yet. Are we done?
We're done.
We're done.
Yeah,
We're done? Oh, okay.
I think what was our last
That's
one?
it. Yes.
Okay, that's the last one.
I didn't see questions.
There you go, questions.
That means you like to look at the presentation. That pops up.
You know, it doesn't end unless you have questions.
Right.
So now that it's officially, we have one more space for one more question to officially wrap up this. But again, if you have additional questions after the meeting, but we want to hold time. So, yes, ma'am.
My question is comment, basically, that I just still want to make it known that while we are basically with a plan with the community and all of that, we still oppose moving Huntington Middle School. And one of the things that these architects had said previously was that this concept could be done without moving the middle school from the current location. And we still feel like 28th Street is not as safe as where the Huntington site is now for our students. So we still oppose the plan, basically. So just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. So What we will do, we will officially close out the meeting. Again, this space is still open and available for comments and concerns, but we wanted to make sure that folks know that the meeting is officially open. So thank you all so much for your time and attention and your comments and your concerns this evening. Have a wonderful evening.
Sheila.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you.
Yes.